this crowd, so we really appreciate having you here. My name is Helen del Guidice. I'm the Curator of Exhibitions and Collections here at the Miller Art Museum. And there's a few people I just want to thank before we get started because I'm likely to forget to do that, and that's rude. I would like to thank Karen Malson, her father Richard Malson, and of course Martha Biaski for being local collectors who graciously loaned artworks to us for the making of this exhibit. All of these pieces come from private collections, either theirs or those of the family, so we're really very grateful to have this exhibit. So this is the studio door, and today I'm going to sit down in conversation with Lars and Lisa Topelmann. Thank you for being here. Lisa has traveled a long way with some difficulty, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your life to do this. We worked very closely on putting together the narrative of this exhibit. This exhibit tells the story of a town, it tells the story of a family, and it tells the story of two individual talents. And thank you for being here, you guys.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. So I want to start in the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your, and I kind of feel like this audience is going to know more about the Topelmanns than I do. Am I correct on that? I really feel like I'm the one that's going to be learning here today. Yeah. Tell me about their beginning. They met in Chicago, independently moved here. Who were they in the beginning? Who were they as young people?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Before I start though, can I just say thank you, and we're so grateful for this opportunity to have this exhibition, to have all of you here and share this moment with you all, and it's just really, really special to us, and we just want to thank you all for being here and being a part of our lives and a part of our parents' lives and a part of the community that made them, so, but getting to your question, before they came here, they were first and foremost immigrants, so that's how their journey started, coming to America with a dream of, family and starting new, a fresh start. I think many immigrants, many of your families would have, come with the same vision of coming to a new country and starting out and seeing what opportunity there could be. So first and foremost, they were immigrants that became independent of each other. Our father, my mother came first. She was sponsored through her Danish relatives, so she came through Ellis Island and lived in New York first, and then...
What year was that?
That was 1956. And and then our father came independent through Iowa, also through different friends that sponsored him. And they both ended up in Chicago, and there was a big German community there. So, and they were, young and going out a lot and meeting people, and they were very social. And then it just so happened that somehow someone said to our father said, there's this artist woman, I think you might have a lot in common, maybe you want her number. Oh yeah, okay, so he got her number, and they talked, he called, they had a phone relationship before they actually met each other, and our mother was very secretive. She didn't want him to know where she lived because she thought in case she didn't, she was smart. So, and then they ended up after a couple of weeks on the phone, and I think realizing that they had so much in common, they really just talked about art and their backgrounds, that were coming from Germany and having lived through the war, and they had a lot in common, and then especially the art that they were doing. And our mother was a fashion designer at the time, and she made also cartoons, and she worked in a studio, and our father was a graphic designer. So
where was she working? What company was she working for? Do you know?
I think it was independent, but I don't remember the name.
So she was taking jobs.
Yeah. And also working as a waitress. So it wasn't full-time, the artwork.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
She worked as a waitress to subsidize life in general, yeah.
And so then they started dating, they started getting closer. When did they start coming to Door County?
In the late 50s. So, and they also came independent of each other, their first
To Door
trip to Door
County.
County, yeah. So my mother was working at the restaurant, and they said, oh, you know, there's this beautiful place called Door County, but she made it as far as Algoma. So Algoma's so it's considered Door County, is it?
Sure.
Not really.
I'll leave it to you people to decide that.
Anyway, so she stayed in Algoma, but that was her first trip, and our father came with his friend, the one that sponsored him, who was also a German that was living in Iowa, and they drove up from Iowa, and they did a big tour around the county, and this friend actually ended up immigrating to Australia, and when I was living in Australia, I met with him, and he showed me all the old photos of their trip to Door County. Yeah, so it was so strange. Here I was, like in Australia, looking at photos of Door County from the 50s.
Right.
Yeah, and hearing about their experiences. So, yeah, they went all the way up to Washington Island, and they just thought it was a beautiful place. And then when they met, then they both, that was another thing they shared. Like, they were like, oh, you've been to Door County? Oh, you've been to Door County? Oh, you know, that was like something that they had in common. And then when they had the family, then we used to vacation up here, and that was every
In Bailey's Harbor.
yeah, every trip, every holiday we
Did they, did Karsten do plein air? I know that he loved to paint on plein air. So was he doing plein air at that time when he came up here?
Yes,
And
yes.
did your
yeah.
mom do any of that kind of stuff? Did she sketch?
She was
or-
busy with the kids, so he went off painting, and she was taking care of the kids.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so
Classic.
that's how it started. So,
Yeah, that's how it started. And when did they decide this is the place? Did they sit down? Who first nudged that idea into
I think it was our mom.
Your mom?
Yeah, she was the spark for that. She said, we could do it, we could move to Door County, we can buy this place, came for sale in Ephraim, and it was her idea to move up. My father was a little bit skeptical, but you know, they did it, and my dad still worked in Chicago, so he commuted, I think for about a year,
first
maybe a year
year,
and a half.
yeah.
So,
He didn't want to give up health insurance and, you
Sure,
know,
sure.
health and security of a job.
Right.
Yeah.
And when they came there, was that the idea that they were going to become artists?
Well,
they were going to open a gallery?
They were already we had a big property outside of Chicago in Teenyville, and they had a big barn in the back, and they would have exhibits and art sales. So they would invite, they were party people, so they invited all their friends, and they had these shows, and they would sell out, and they were like, okay, I think we're onto something here. So they then thought, well, where could we do that in Door County? You know, could we, transport that
mood,
to a
that
place,
feeling, that scene.
to a place where they felt they could live and be inspired, you know, by nature around them, and be their own boss, and not have anyone to answer to, and see if they could make it. That was the plan.
You know, did they choose Ephraim specifically? I mean, when we were writing this, one of the things, and you'll read throughout the cards as you go through the exhibit, you know, there was this great love of Ephraim and all these incredible paintings, and these are only just a few, right? They throughout their careers, both of them painted this town. So did they choose Ephraim?
Yes,
so.
we looked at a couple of properties in Bailey's Harbor, but Ephraim was what they really wanted. We also actually stayed in Bailey's Harbor because it was cheaper to stay there than on the other side. So that's kind of how we started there. But Ephraim was their love, and then they made an offer on a place in Bailey's Harbor, and it fell through. And then they found the Larson property in Ephraim, and their offer was accepted, and that was and that was, you know, the property with the cottages. So they thought, you know, if they couldn't make it as with the art gallery, they would rent out the cottages. And then my mother had a backup plan that if she couldn't make it as an artist, she'd open a restaurant, you know. So she was determined, you know, one way or another to make it. And she pulled our father along, who again for the first year was very reluctant, and but she made it happen. Yeah.
So what do you think it is about Ephraim? Are there like similarities to I know that they were also enchanted with Rothenburg, which we'll talk about later. What was it about Ephraim in particular that was so perfect for them?
I think it was the scale, and also the proximity of the buildings
water.
to the water, and just the whole, you know, two church steeples and Wilsons, and I mean, there's just a combination of all those things. It was really magical.
The quaintness, I think the history of, you know, the Moravians and the just that everything was white and it was just clean and pure and so picturesque, that I think that's what really they just loved. You know,
Kind of fit their aesthetic.
It just fit the
kind of fit what
aesthetic
they were
of-
used to.
Yeah, the aesthetic of the village and just the you know, the beauty of the water and the sunsets over the water and just, yeah, they just loved it.
Yeah, it seems obvious to me that they would choose you from learning about them in this, but you know, I wanted to hear it from you guys, what specifically it was about the town. I mean, the paintings you can see, there's a lot of love in all their paintings, but there's a particular love in the paintings of Ephraim. So, and so tell me about the family. Tell me about growing up with these two, dare I say flamboyant, outgoing artists.
Yeah, well, they were busy, you know, and we ran wild, you know.
No sign of that.
I think we could have a few out there that could attest to that. We, you know, they were very, very focused on their life and painting and the gallery, and we just were kind of, you know, and it was different. It was different times back then. It wasn't, you know, they weren't worried about anything. You just played in the streets, and you left in the morning and you came home in the evening, you know. And it was like she had a dinner bell, and when the dinner
At 5
bell,
o'clock it was ringing.
when the dinner bell rang, that's when we came home. And
Did you come home right away,
Yeah, we
or
did.
like we took another 10
It was
minutes?
right away.
But there were no questions like, where were you? What did you do? What, you know, we were running wild and having fun and playing with kids and over at other people's houses, and it was great. You know, we didn't, you know, we didn't have a, you know, it was a very carefree, fun way to grow up, you know, and yeah.
And safe.
It was.
Because
very
I grew up
safe, yeah.
exactly the same way, that I was out running wild and my parents never asked questions, and we were never really with adults, like maybe stick with your sister kind of a thing, but I was in inner city Chicago.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? You guys
Yeah.
maybe didn't run into as much stuff as I did, but you know, that's wonderful.
But we had in Ephraim, you know, it was nice because we had like the locals that lived there all year round. And then we had, you know, so many summer people that would come up in the summer, and that so we had like these double friends, you know, of like, yeah, just the
people would return and you'd see them again.
It was fun, and summers were always, of course, the highlight of the year.
So were you sort of celebrities amongst those kids, like the ones that get to live here all the time kind of thing?
I don't know about that.
No?
But it was actually interesting living, because we lived in the gallery. So there was rooms upstairs, and that's where we lived. But our kitchen was through the gallery. So when the gallery was open, we would run through the gallery as fast as we could.
Get in trouble sometimes.
So,
Sandwich.
we didn't know anything different. It was like, well, you live in a gallery, you know.
Right.
It's like you look at paintings as you're going through the kitchen to go have dinner. you know.
Yeah.
So
Or the studio, right? Where the
Yeah.
studios were upstairs
Yeah.
as well, is that
Yeah.
right? 3 stories, that's an incredible house.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool house.
And on the other hand, you know, we were also, our growing up was a little bit different, you know, because our parents were a little bit different, you know, than the locals. Maybe, you know, we were, you know, children of artists, but we were also children of immigrants, you know, that spoke German to each other in the home, and they had my mother had a very heavy accent, you know, so people that would come over to our house, you know, it was, you know, sometimes a real experience, you know, to interact with that kind of an environment. So we were, I don't know if we were celebrities, but we were definitely a little bit special.
We were
you know?
different.
We were different, you know, and I mean, and growing up, it was sometimes, you know, quite hard, you know, and people, you know, say, oh, you know, don't go over to Lisa's house, her mom's an alien, you know. She speaks this weird language, and she yells at her in this weird, heavy accent. And so it was, you know, challenging. I mean, I think we appreciated that more when we were older.
Sure.
We could see, you know, the beauty in that, but when you were young and you just want to fit in and be like everybody else, it was hard sometimes.
Sometimes challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're a little bit different. Let's talk about that. I never had the opportunity to meet your mom, but I did without knowing, you know, with a little bit of hindsight, boy, but I did meet your dad one time. He submitted to the juried annual the first year that I took this position here, and he came to the opening, and the only thing I remember about him is the color pink. right? I think he was wearing pink pants or pink shirt or something. There was a lot of pink going on, and they were stylish, huh? Were they always stylish like that, even when they were younger, or?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, they were, yeah.
I think you can see in some of the photos too that are around here and some of the cards, but there was lots of colors and patterns.
Lots of
going
colors
on.
and patterns.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They like to sort of thematically dress together, right?
They did.
Yeah.
They were pretty much a dynamic duo.
They were a dynamic duo.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine their personalities reflected exactly that, how they dressed. Was your mom, I have this feeling, and I know that a lot of you people already know the answer to this question. Was your mom, I get this feeling that your mom was a little quieter than your father. Was he the outgoing one? Okay. Proven wrong, take that off.
No, the reverse, actually. Yeah.
Oh, she was the...
He was the quiet, more introspective one who he had quite a sense of humor, but if she ever let him talk, no, she was definitely more the
She was the
vivacious
the
one.
face of
Yeah.
the couple.
Yeah.
Yes, but you know, in a nice partnership. I think they had their roles and it was very clear, you know, and they complemented each other very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun following this story, you know, and learning about that, working with you guys and learning about them, and it's been quite an adventure. Tell me about how I'm curious about Tenerife and Rothenburg, because in doing this and writing the cards and talking with you, they seem to spend a lot of time of the year in these, you know, these places. How did they manage all that with a family and a gallery to run? And
Yeah.
what was the schedule like that they were going off to these places?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah. Well, in fact, we have one of our babysitters in the audience who used to babysit us. They would, you know, they were carefree. I don't think you would do today what they did back then. You know, this was the 70s. They just went to Europe, you know, and left us with a babysitter and called once a week. Everything okay? Yeah. You know?
2 months? How long was it?
Yeah. A month, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes 6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
it was carefree. Sometimes we stayed with our aunt, you know, and so it was, yeah, so that's how it started. They were always pulled, you know, they wanted to go back to Europe and be there as much as they could. They started going back like when we were in our teens, about a month, and then it started to increase, 2 months, 3 months, and then when we started becoming more independent, then they would go for longer.
Right, sure.
So, and then they increased to like almost half a year that they were.
And they established like a routine. They would go to Germany first, then they would go to the Canary Islands because that's just a flight, you know, shorter flight, and then they would come back to Germany and then back to the States. But they would bring a package full of canvases and watercolor paper, and they would basically paint the whole time. So they would be working.
They brought that with them.
They
brought all their
brought
supplies with
yeah.
them.
So they would leave with it, you know, empty. Basically, and then they'd come back with new paintings. And so we would be able to get to see them when they got back. It was great.
And did they bring you presents? What kind of presents did they bring home?
Paintings.
Paintings, that's it? Did you get like the special paper gun?
Well, when they went to Hong Kong once, we got Rolex watches.
Oh, there you go.
Real Rolex
All right.
No, but yeah, because they had their particular, you know, materials that they liked, and they had the places that they ordered from, and my dad always had the special paper and the special paint, so they ordered all of that, and were always stocked and packed, and then they moved with that, and then left empty and came back, and they were always very, you know, diligent. They were always painting. You know, it was always something that they wanted to do and enjoyed doing, and it was just part of everywhere they went. There was always painting involved.
It's really incredible. You know, I said in our little member preview yesterday in our talk that I'm working with a daughter of an artist who has passed, and both her mother and father were painters. And it's so common that, you know, the pressures of raising a family and working and supporting your lifestyle forces one or the other to get a job, and most of the time it's the woman that has to kind of give up her art career to like promote his art career, and that's what happened to Joseph Freebert, who, you know, I'm working with his daughter to tell their story. But your parents like worked it out. How, I mean.
Well, yeah, she painted all night, you know, she made it.
She made
Yeah,
the family,
yeah.
she did the family stuff in the daytime, and then she painted in the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first couple of years, yeah, to
Yeah.
just keep the production going, and that was the only time she had time to do
Right.
it. So she did
That's a lot.
sacrifice a lot.
But she had a lot of energy, so it
Yeah.
worked out pretty good.
She says that's where Lars gets his energy
Yeah,
from.
and this
Yeah.
one too, so.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd have to have a lot of energy, my God, to
Yeah.
work all day with the family and then work all night. And you guys went to Gibraltar, is that right?
I did.
Mhm. As well as Tanya went to Gibraltar?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And Tanya won the High School Salon of Art here at the Miller Art Museum. She won the award for that, huh?
Yes, she was
Nice.
very talented.
Did you guys
Yeah.
ever enter that? Were you ever in the
No.
Miller Art Museum High School
No.
Salon of Art?
Yes,
You
I
weren't
was.
artistic?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
You were? Okay.
Yes, yep. And they hung my painting upside down, so.
Wasn't me.
Abstract, so they couldn't know. Like Mother Young, you know, that's been hanging upside down for 60 years,
Yeah.
but no.
I will admit I have actually hung things accidentally upside down, but it's, hey man, it's easy to do. So sometimes it's easy to do. That's great. So you're artistic as well.
Semi.
Semi.
Semi, but that was, growing up, it was always like,
Yeah.
because our sister was, you know, she tragically passed, as most of you know, but she was very talented, and you know, so she kind of was the oldest, so she had that sort of covered, you know, so, and then Lars was coming up, he was also very creative, and then it was like me, you know, and then and everybody was like, oh, you know, let Lisa paint that, her parents are an artist, she must be good at that, you know, and I'd be like, but I'm not, you know, I mean, I enjoyed art class, I have, you know, we had fun, you know, with my classmates and from high school, I enjoyed it. Robert Merline was our teacher, who we absolutely loved, but he instilled in me more the love of art, but more on the other side, you know, so I studied art history and curator, and so I'm more on the other side, and I was also the framer in the gallery for them for pretty much many years, so I was always on the other side, yeah. But
And you're a photographer,
yeah.
right? I mean,
Yes,
so.
my father was a good photographer, so he basically told me kind of the basics of composition and some of the technical things, and so we kind of like, you know, maybe he taught me sort of the basics, and then I went on in high school and took
Like
photos.
chemical-based photography and stuff, it must have been in
Oh, yeah.
the early days,
The
huh?
classic,
Was it
yeah,
olden-
the
in
old
olden
school,
days.
yeah.
With the tongs and the.
He didn't do darkroom, but it was he did slides. So
Oh,
colored
okay.
Slides. Yeah.
But now I noticed that Tanya's signature is quite like Karsten's signature. When you look at this painting, so, you know, we have one artwork in the exhibit that was by Tanya, and she and her father were out on plein air painting and sort of looking at the same scene and sort of did their own version of the same scene, but then when you look at the signature, it also is nearly identical the way she signs her name. So he had a huge influence on her, and your mother probably as well. I saw her, you know, taking this little thing from Ellen and taking this little thing from Karsten, but then having her own perspective. It was really quite fascinating. You know, Ellen always included the dog or a cat.
Yeah.
There's some cats.
Yeah.
I've seen some
Yeah.
cats. And then Tanya often included a bird, the cardinal in particular, right? And did paintings of birds.
Yeah, she loved animals, and she was just really, really good. And I think, yeah, she was mainly inspired by our parents, but again, at Gibraltar, she had some very good art teachers, so I think it was really nice to be in a community where, you know, arts were so important, and it wasn't you know, anything strange. It was supported, and it just was very natural. So it was, yeah, I think she got a lot of support at home and at school, so it was really nice.
That's wonderful, yeah. It's great to have that piece there. I love looking at, those are two of my favorite pieces in the exhibit, actually. So I want to talk a little bit about their individual talents. I know Karsten always, he was interested in botanicals and natural scenes, landscapes, architecture and structures. Did he ever paint figures? To my knowledge, these
Yeah.
are the only figures he ever painted, correct?
Of the family,
Of the
like he
family.
did some self-portraits, which are hanging in there, and then some later portraits of like the girl with the dog, and but not so much, you know. And this is the only time he painted the family.
It's the only time he painted the family.
Yeah.
Everybody with their favorite item, right?
Yeah.
Part of their lifestyle. Was she able to produce as much as him? I feel like he produced really regularly and an enormous amount of work. Was
Yeah.
she able to do that? I mean, her paintings are so much more detailed and
Exactly.
Yeah, I think his volume was way higher as far as the amount of paintings that he produced. And also it has to do with the medium, because if he's doing watercolor, you know, he could do that in a few hours.
Right.
And you know, look at one of these acrylic paintings that my mother did. This is days, weeks. you know.
Months
Weeks,
sometimes,
months,
yeah, the detail was incredible, so hers took.
and her paintings tend to be a little larger too, right?
Yeah, and much more detailed.
Much
so,
more
yeah.
detailed.
And she didn't, I mean, I don't know if she painted every day, you know, but our father painted every day.
He had a routine.
So she had days maybe where she didn't paint,
I see.
but he didn't really go through a day where there wasn't some.
He had a
form of-
routine, so
yeah.
he had
It
a
was
practice.
therapeutic for him. He really counted on it
Mm,
every day.
mm.
Elaborate on that. He counted on it.
No, I think it was part of his routine, and I think he got into a zone where he really was, it was like muscle memory and just, I don't know how you explain
He
it, but-
needed it. It was, I mean, that is kind of, you know, that artistic sort of outlet. I think it was just the way that he coped with the world somehow, you know, he needed it, and it was a way for him. He had a very busy mind. I also have a very busy mind and think a lot of things, and sometimes you end up going down the wrong, you know, thinking path, negative, or, you know, these kinds of things. And I think painting was a way to sort of even him out, you know, so it was a real need, like he needed it. It was a way for him to focus, and he was creating something beautiful, and he was extremely focused, and it brought him the balance that he needed in his life.
You know, I'm a painter, and I kind of feel like, and other painters who might be here can maybe yay or nay me on this, but I feel like becoming a painter is demanding alone time. You know, like you have to be alone to do it. I mean, there's people who collaborate on paintings, but generally you have to be alone to do it. It's a way of carving out your own space for you and your mind to have a relationship and engage and,
Yeah.
you know, do that. Do you feel like that's something that was true of Karsten in
Yeah,
particular?
for him, it was also like a way for him to calm his mind, you know. I think painting was a really calming experience for him, and he was highly concentrated, and it was just calming for him, and he found peace in it, and beauty, and a way to just,
Was that true for
manage.
your mom too?
No, I think she was very
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, she painted because, I mean, she didn't need it like he did.
Yeah.
And I think she enjoyed it, and she enjoyed the joy that it brought to other people, and she enjoyed painting joy into her paintings, and so she just had a very different way that it meant something different to her. It was very different what painting meant to them.
Well, that's something that runs through all of their paintings, both of them, is joy. There's no discontent in their paintings ever.
Yeah, that's true.
Your mother in particular infuses this sort of community unison and celebration and, you know, simple. She puts a kaleidoscope on the simplest of moments in a family, or you know,
Yeah.
kind of and part of that is the trick of using this sort of imagined past, like the fashion on the figures, and you know, they're automatically placed in some time that you can't quite put your finger on, but
Yeah.
you know, it's a time that's idyllic and joyful.
Simpler somehow.
Simpler
and,
somehow.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that joy was actually one of her favorite words. You know, she always said, enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. And, you know, in some of her paintings, joys at the old pond, and she loved the word joy. And I think, you know, that is her main, you know, goal was to convey that joy and bring that joy in her paintings. And And so it was that, but, and for our father, you know, he conveyed it differently. You know, I think they're bright and they're beautiful. He conveyed beauty as well, but differently, you know, and my mother.
Playful.
Yeah, but our mother was a people person, you know, she loved people, so that's why there's people in her paintings, because she loved people, and she loved people's stories, and she loved communicating, and our father was, you know, they're more peaceful, they're calm, they're still, you know, beautiful, but they don't, there's no people in them, you know, as such, you know, so.
Again, carving out alone time.
Yeah, to convey that sort of peacefulness and calmness. I think that what he was feeling in himself, to convey that through his paintings.
Mm-hmm. You told me too at one point that when he was a young man, and I don't know exactly when that was, he kind of went on a trip through Europe, like in the footsteps of Cézanne and Van Gogh, and was that his aspiration as a painter, to really paint like these European 18th century masters?
Yeah. I mean, those were definitely his, you know, the people he looked up to, the artists that he looked up to. He studied at the Art Academy in Munich, and of course, those were the masters that you studied, but he loved that idea of traveling to, you know, beautiful, exotic, you know, southern France, and there's the, you know, the painting of Marseille over there, where when he was on that plein air trip with his parents, he would, you know, stop in all these famous places that, you know, Cézanne and Picasso had painted, and he was very aware of where they were and where they painted and the different scenes, and he wanted to follow in those footsteps. And And he painted on plein air with his father. Yes, yep.
And then he painted on plein air with his wife.
Yep.
And with his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real sense of interchange between the family members. Where were you two in that? What were you guys doing when everybody was out plein air?
When everybody was out,
Wreaking havoc on the town.
Our own lives, just getting up to trouble, or
We had our own program going on.
But in terms of I was lucky enough to live in southern France a year, and then my parents came down to visit, and then we actually recreated that tour that he was on with his parents. So it was actually really nice, you know, to go on that. He was very proud of that, you know, that he actually also sponsored his parents. He was very proud that he could, you know, pay for that and take them on this beautiful trip. So he was happy when I didn't sponsor them though, but but he took me around, so that was really nice. But we were just, you know, Lars. I mean, it depends, you know, during.
Well, we were really involved with looking at their artwork too, because they would come back from the European trips, and it was like a presentation.
Right.
We would sit back and then, here's this one, and then my dad would pull it out of the box, and how about this one? And then we would, you know, kind of comment about what we thought and what we liked, and, you know, favorites go over here, and like, you know, it was a real, we were involved.
A critique session, it was a critique session.
It was really exciting because we saw their work and we got to know, you know, and we're very close to what, you know, throughout the years we could see what they're painting and what they like, and so it was really fun to be part of that.
Yeah, but we traveled to those places too, so we would spend Christmas in Tenerife. The year after our sister died, we stopped sort of having this like Ephraim family Christmas just because it was too hard. So we started going to Tenerife, and that became sort of what we did, you know. So we got to experience that and go out with them, and we'd go and stay for a month. We were both at university, so we had like a month off in January, so we'd go then, and then if we were, you know, in Europe, we'd go visit them in Rothenburg, and so we were a part of it, not the daily, but we experienced all these places pretty, you know, intimately with them. So that's been really special.
I feel like my son, I raised my son in Rome, Italy. For 10 years we were in Rome, Italy, and you know, the one thing he wouldn't do when he was a teenager was go to a museum, because I dragged him through so many museums. But now he has this great appreciation of art. He's an art collector and all of that. But I mean, I see a similarity there, that you had this sort of intimate inside view of how art is created, what artists are thinking, their philosophies, and
Yeah.
how to examine art and look at it and watch it grow.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about, you know, and it was very much, yeah, just the way we were brought up, and I also think that's something that Lars and I have passed on to our kids, you know, even though I think there's, you know, Lars's kids are very artistic, mine aren't very artistic, but they have a deep appreciation for art, and I think we've instilled that in them, and I think we're really happy that we could do that.
What kind of artwork are your children involved with? What do they do?
Music art.
Music art.
But performance art, so,
Performance.
yeah.
So one of the things that I love about the paintings, and I'm sure all of you do too, is they're full of secret messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's secret little scenes of people that they know. Lars, you're in several of these on this wall here, and friends getting married. So the figures, your mom, well, they both did, right? I mean, Martha was telling me about, in this painting here, there's a lighthouse painted into the painting somewhere, and I know where it is, but I didn't manage to get that onto the card, so people will just have to wonder and find it for themselves. But you can email me and I'll tell you where the lighthouse is. But they love to do that. They love those hidden surprises. One of Karen Malson's paintings that she loaned us is this beautiful scene where he sets a still life with some of his treasured objects, and the teapot and the teacup and the flowers, and then in the teapot there's this tall, slender image of himself in there. They like to do that.
Yeah.
And they collaborated on painting quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm. They did an annual Christmas card for many years that they collaborated on, and then the piece that's in the show, that's Karen's piece, is a Rotenberg scene where my mother painted the people and our father painted the buildings. So, and they both signed it. So
they both signed it.
Really special, yeah.
And they would either work in gouache or watercolor when they collaborated, right?
Yes.
Because she only painted in acrylic.
She did not do oil.
No,
she did not do
because
oil.
She didn't like the smell, and she said it dried too slowly.
She wanted it to move.
Yeah, it has to go fast. So she definitely liked the acrylic, and our father, the opposite, he liked oil because it dried slowly, and didn't like acrylic because it dried too quickly. So they both, had a different medium that they enjoyed working in. But watercolor they could agree on. So if they collaborated, then it was
That's what they
watercolor.
did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Well, I want to see if the audience has any questions for them.
I do. So your grandfather, their parents were artists also?
Our mother's father was Danish, and he was he made stained glass for churches. So he was very artistic, and as well.
And that's Karsten.
That's Ellen's grandfather.
Okay.
And then our father's father was an architect, and his mother was a sculptor. So yes, they were also artistic.
But he liked to paint. He went out painting.
Yes, it was also So he was but he was always painting the buildings. He was very architectural in his drawings.
Did either of your parents do anything besides painting? Did they ever dabble in sculpture and?
My dad did some etchings, but that's still kind of in the painting realm.
Making,
But I don't recall it.
And then he started playing with the angled frames and getting crafty, and you took part in that, didn't you?
That's correct, yeah.
So you were the carpenter.
He had to make the frames,
He liked the idea, though. So
he liked the idea, so he went for it. That's awesome. Any other questions? Candy.
Your poster had this juicy word I never heard, Hanseatic. I don't even know if I'm saying it right.
Yes.
I did a little Google search, and what is this word? And that it's medieval guild, means guild in German.
Mm-hmm.
But it went kaput in 1836, it said.
Yes.
So I wondered what that word meant and how that philosophy and everything affected your family.
Yes, well, it's pronounced Hanseatic, and it's Hansa in German, and our mother was born in Hamburg, which was one of the Hansa cities. So it was a league of cities in the medieval times, of trading cities, and up on the Baltic and around. So it was a guild of these cities that had, you know, different trade agreements, and they were called Hanseatic. So and Hamburg is called the Hansestadt Hamburg. So, and she was very proud of that, and they wanted a name. Also, they didn't want to call it the Topelmann Gallery because maybe it wouldn't work out as the Topelmann Gallery. Maybe
in case they had a divorce.
Well, in case they would take in other artists, or in case
Right.
they, you know,
Sure.
would. So, and they specifically chose to not call it the Topelmann Gallery. So they looked for a name, and they decided on the Hanseatic to be the name. And they also liked the idea that of the flags that you can see in the painting of the gallery. Those are the Hansa colors of the flags in Hamburg, and that's very much emblematic of the Hansa cities. That
The red and
they
white
have these
stripes,
flags.
Hamburg in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
So all of the different cities that were members of the Hanseatic League or Guild,
Yeah.
where they had their own flag.
Yeah. And
With
then
an emblem, and
Yeah.
they had color codes, and Hamburg's was, of course, red and white stripes, right? With a
Did
little.
each city have a certain style of painting or a school that?
no, that didn't have anything to do with like a painting guild or anything. It was
It's a trade.
purely just the name
Mercantile.
of the city.
Okay.
Of the city, a trade in terms of, mercantile trading, shipping, you know, that kind of trade, yeah. So it was just the name of the city that they chose. And then to the way that they just created the outside of the building. But then it had meaning that it was where our mother was born.
They were always thinking
Yeah.
ahead, huh? They were always having like a plan B, it seems to
Yeah,
me.
well, that was because when they first
Was
started.
that your mom, or was
Yeah,
that your
it was-
dad?
I don't know.
Both of
Combo,
them.
probably.
Yeah, but it was a backup plan because it was a big risk, you know, people said,
Sure.
you know, you're crazy, you're gonna give up your job and move to Door County, and you've got young kids, and what are you doing? And people really were, you know, not sure that was the right thing, but they were very convinced that they could do it, but had a backup plan just in case.
And they made it work.
Yeah.
And people loved them. I mean, if you don't mind me saying so, in meeting Karen and Dick Malson, the sense of admiration and just really appreciation and dedication that Karen in particular showed in speaking about your parents was really quite touching. I mean, people loved them.
Yeah, they were special, and I think, you know, they loved people. They loved, you know, being with people. They loved inviting people to our house. You know, they were special, and they had a lot of friends. And I think, you know, we were talking about this the other day, that I think coming to the gallery was more than just coming to a gallery, that it was really about an experience that you got when you were in the gallery. So, and it didn't matter if you bought a painting or not. You know, our mother was interested in your life, and she had she always would ask people how they met. You know, so she knew how everybody met, and she had a very strong memory, so she could always repeat the story if you came back the next year. Oh, you were the ones that met, you know, when you were camping in Iowa, and, you know, and people would be like, what? Oh, you know, and so, and it makes people, you know, I think we all want to, you know, feel special, you know, and
She could
I
do
think
that.
she could do that. She could make people feel special, and I think that was.
And she probably genuinely thought they were special.
Yeah, she really did, because she was just interested in people and in their lives, and so I think that was part of the, you know, what made the gallery successful was this experience that you got. It wasn't just, you know, come in and they would never have anyone work in the gallery for them. You know, they had to be there because that was part of the experience of what was, you know, meeting them and talking about the art and hearing about their lives, and she wouldn't let anyone pass through the gallery without talking to them. You know, she would, now, how are you? And, you know, where are you staying? And she would, you know, now, have you been here before? And then she would just give the story to everyone, and never tired of it, because that's where she got her energy. And I think that was what made the gallery experience unique.
That's a good impression too, by the way.
Yeah.
It slipped out a little.
I can do a very good impression. Ask my friends. I can imitate my mother very well.
Any other questions, Karen?
I just wanted to amplify something that you touched on a little bit earlier about you asked whether Karsten experimented with sculpture or other things like that. Well, he didn't necessarily, as you said, use other techniques like that, but he was always experimenting. He did a series of paintings on silk, he bought special paints to do all of that. I have a painting that he did on a tree stump. I mean, he was always just something new would come out there and he would want to try it. Somebody did a series of, Lars, you know more about this than I do, but some years ago, of commemorative plates, and Karsten painted the first plate for that series.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the people that you could always go to when you had some idea for something new to do, whether it was the corner paintings later on in life or earlier on. Anytime something new came out, he would just try it.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see how the things came out. Some of them were more successful than others. Most of them were quite good.
And he would get so excited, that little twinkle in his eye would, you know, and he just got excited for new things and did, love to experiment and, it was.
Well, you can see it in his paintings, his hand is very quick and free, and hers is more tight and specific and time consuming, so you could see that he would, in the self-portraits you can see that too, that he's just, playful and experimenting, and I get the feeling, I mean, obviously he wanted a great painting, and he strived for that, but I get the feeling that he, like, if a painting didn't work out, it didn't bother him, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
he just kept going.
And, he didn't have that masterpiece syndrome that,
No.
as I refer to it, that you approach a canvas and it has to be the best painting you ever did. He just kind of went for it.
Yeah, and our mother very much, her style, you can really recognize her style, like it's very consistent. And whereas our father was, again, much more experimental and, more prolific in a sense of
Subject
wider
matter.
variety of subject matter, for sure.
And mediums too, like
Yeah.
silk and things like that.
I have a question about the business of art. It seems to me that they were very, very early to the large-scale distribution of prints of their work.
Yeah.
We're really very at the forefront of that. Way back in the 70s, some of the things that your dad did that were more of that showed the commercial style that he had come from, and then evolving over time. But what germ? Who came up with, like, let's make prints and sell thousands of these?
Well, I think it was also an accessibility question, the paintings weren't cheap, and so people would come in and they would want to buy something, but they couldn't afford it. So then it was like, well, okay, we can reproduce this and get a very good reproduction quality, and for those that can't afford original, they can buy print. So it was a really good business model, but it also satisfied, of course it was profitable for them, but it was also a way to share the artwork and make it more accessible to different people.
I mean, I am the first to tell artists all the time, be dedicated to your artwork and always be striving for your personal best, but create merch. You need merch. Like, as a museum, we want it in our gift shop. We need something that we can, I mean, not everybody can buy a painting, that's the thing. Not everyone can buy a painting, but pretty much everybody can walk away with the card or the catalog or, get some merch.
Yeah, so they can connect with it in their way at their accessible.
They can remember it. They can remember it.
Yeah.
I know I do that when I go to a museum. I get the book, I get the card, I get the this, I get the that. I always have to walk away with some merch.
I'm Carrie Anderson, and I know Lisa from way, way, way back at the cookery days when she was still in high school. And I'm so proud of you. And Lars is the quiet one here today, but I just want to sing some praises for him. I know that he moved back to Ephraim to take care of his dad several years ago and was very dedicated to his care all the way through the end of his life. And even though I didn't know Lars that well, I knew Lisa more. And you have blown my mind with how your career has gone from this little girl at the cookery to, I believe because of your connection to your parents and to Germany and your education, correct me if I'm wrong, you were director at the Holocaust Museum?
According to my mother, I was the director. I was the curator, but in my mother's words, I was the director.
That's a good job too.
Yeah, she liked to show off a little bit, yeah, but,
Well,
right.
good for your mom to say that. And then just one more thing. I'm so glad it came today because so much of this puzzle comes together for me. If your parents came here in 1956, which was a good year because that was the year I was born, but, and I was from Iowa, they must have survived World War II. And when we look at these beautiful, joyful paintings and know that they survived the horror of World War II, it's hard to, I mean, it's just kind of leaves me speechless. So, that's all I have.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Karsten would tell me a story about his time, outside of Munich, in a small village, and that near the end of World War II, when they were marching Jews out of Dachau over the border, where he lived close to the Austrian border, and that he actually was on the roadside and saw this enormous line of people being forcibly marched out of the country.
Well, I think just getting, and I think, that, again, living through something like that and seeing the things that they saw, I think it's just that they just wanted to bring beauty to the world, you know, because they why would you bring something, with having lived through all of that, it's a natural thing to just want to create beauty, I think, and that's what they wanted, and especially our mother, because she chose Europe as sort of
the backdrop.
European as the backdrop, and so in her mind it was this place, before the war that was beautiful and untouched. I mean, there were always wars, but I mean, I think we can all agree, World War II was one of the worst, and all the destruction that she lived through and that she saw, and that just want to create this beauty that they wanted to share and give people beauty rather than something that was painful or something that would bring back negative memories. So I think that of course hugely influenced them to
When you have the power to create it yourself, why create something dark?
Exactly, yeah. So that was that was their objective to because they were survivors too. They were. I mean, that deeply affected them, and
They clearly spoke about such things with friends. Right? Did they talk about their experiences with the family a lot? Did you guys talk
especially
about
our
things like
mother?
that?
She was very. If we had a problem. I lived through the war, so she. Anything.
You couldn't give her any girls whining and crying.
No. There's nothing compared to that. So
She's right.
She was right. She was always right.
What you gonna do?
Yeah. So yes, she did talk of it. It deeply affected her, and she, when people would listen, it was, we were growing up. It was like, oh, that again. We didn't want to hear it because
don't pull out the war card.
Exactly, but it was tough times,
And you are related to Karsten or to Ellen? You're the auntie.
I'm the sister-in-law to Ellen and Karsten. My husband was the brother of Ellen.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So all of our mother's siblings are passed, and Heidi is the widow of our mother's brother.
And did you travel to be here today, or are you from your county?
With the son.
They drove out from St. Louis yesterday, and they're going back today. They came up just for today. So.
Wow.
And that tall guy back there, that's Dirk, that's my cousin.
The guy that needs no chair. You had a question, sir.
Yes, I did. There was another artist who called our county his home, and he was German descent. And he would go to Europe every winter in the off season and do his sketches. Was there ever any interaction or collaboration with Gerhard Miller?
Not collaboration, but they knew each other, and they would often come for lunch. Our mother was a very good lunch server and very good cook, so she had a lot of dinner parties, a lot of lunch parties, and and they were good friends with the Ingersons and with the Millers, and then other artists, the Pechmans and Andrew Redman, so they had parties and they socialized, and especially in the early years, there was a lot going on. But then in the later years, it was more, tame, dinner parties and lunch parties and that. But any kind of artistic collaboration with Gerhard Miller, no. But with James Ingerson, yes, they were a part of the painting classes, the sketch classes.
Sketching at the barn.
Yeah. There's two that you'll see in the exhibit here and some upstairs. So, yeah.
Yeah, James, in also the James Ingerson upstairs, right?
Yeah.
He was telling us about that too, about the Karsten and Ellen coming to the barn drawing sessions and taking their turn sitting as models on occasion as that sort of system went.
And they had a bit of a critique session after that too, so I guess that was artistic engagement, but they wouldn't, travel together or anything like that, but very much.
Well, I feel like we could do this all evening. I do want to wrap it up and pull out some refreshments and let us walk around and look at the exhibits. You guys, thank you so much. Does anyone... pleasure it's been to work on this show with you guys. I really learned a lot, and I feel like I missed out on a little something here in Door County. A little late coming, but it was really a pleasure working with you, and I appreciate all the efforts that you made in coming here today. Thank you to you, the audience. Now, this is the studio door, and there's one question that I always ask on the studio door to kind of close it out, and I don't know how it's going to play out with you guys, but what advice do you have for young artists who are looking to fulfill a dream the way your parents fulfilled a dream? What would you tell them?
Stick to your guns and work really, really hard.
Have a plan B.
Yeah, I have a plan B, yeah. But I think also what our parents always said, to Lars, because he was starting out as a photographer, is like, oh, does the world need another photographer, But our father always said, there's always room for one good photographer more, so there's always room for one good artist more, or one dedicated artist more, so
perfect.
Don't give up and just, follow your dreams and just give it a go, and don't give up.